Vanilla's story begins deep in the rainforests of Mesoamerica, a region where lush canopies cradle a plant both revered and mysterious. For the Totonac people of present-day Mexico, vanilla was no ordinary crop. It was divine. They called it Tlilixochitl, or black flower, after the dark, fragrant pods that emerge from the orchid's delicate blooms. The Totonacs wove vanilla into their rituals and legends, believing it was a gift from the gods. But this treasure would not remain theirs alone. When the Aztecs conquered the Totonacs, they embraced vanilla with equal fervor, blending it with cacao to create a bitter, intoxicating drink known as chocolatl. Reserved for royalty and warriors, this drink symbolized power, vitality, and the divine. Vanilla's journey to Europe began in 1519, when Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés encountered this exotic flavor at the court of the Aztec emperor Montezuma. Awestruck, Cortés brought vanilla to Spain, where it quickly became a sensation. In Europe, it was no longer paired with cacao but refined into a standalone flavor, a mark of wealth and sophistication. But despite its rising fame, vanilla faced an unusual obstacle. It resisted cultivation outside its native Mexico. The orchid's flowers bloom for just a single day each year, and their pollination depended on a tiny, specific bee native to Mesoamerica. Without this bee, the flowers could not bear fruit, and vanilla remained a rare and precious commodity. This biological conundrum kept vanilla tied to its birthplace until the 19th century, when the French brought the plant to Madagascar. Drawn by the island's fertile soils and humid climate, they believed they had found the perfect environment for vanilla cultivation. Yet their optimism was met with frustration. Without the pollinating bee, the vines remained barren. In 1841, a remarkable breakthrough came from an unlikely figure. Edmund Albius, a 12-year-old enslaved boy on Réunion Island, then under French control. With no formal education, Edmund observed the orchid's anatomy and devised a method to pollinate it by hand. Using a small stick or blade of grass, he lifted the flower's rostellum and pressed the male and female parts together, ensuring fertilization. This technique revolutionized vanilla farming. For the first time, vanilla could be cultivated far from its native Mexico, breaking free from the constraints of nature and geography. Edmund Albius's discovery was transformative, yet his name faded into obscurity, his brilliance overshadowed by the colonial system that exploited his labor. With hand pollination, the French expanded vanilla cultivation across Madagascar, a land whose tropical climate and volcanic soil proved ideal for producing beans of unmatched quality. By the late 19th century, the island was emerging as a global powerhouse, supplying the world with the majority of its vanilla. Vanilla's success in Madagascar was not just about climate and soil. It was about the people who cultivated it. From the earliest days, local farmers learned to master the painstaking process of vanilla production, a craft that demanded patience, precision, and dedication. Every flower had to be pollinated by hand, every pod harvested at the perfect moment, and every bean cured through weeks of careful drying and sweating. Madagascar's farmers brought an artistry to this work, transforming vanilla from an exotic novelty into a global commodity. By the early 20th century, Madagascar was firmly established as the world's leading producer of vanilla, its beans prized for their rich, creamy flavor and aromatic complexity. This transformation laid the foundation for a trade that would define Madagascar's economy and its cultural identity. Vanilla became more than a crop. It became a symbol of opportunity and ingenuity, a link between a distant past and a promising future. In the early 20th century, a quiet revolution unfolded in Madagascar's northeastern corner, in a place called Sava. Beneath the relentless tropical sun, farmers moved through fields of delicate vines, their hands performing an ancient choreography. They worked not for glory, but for survival, unaware that these vines would soon carry their island's name to distant markets, to faraway lands that would never know the rhythm of their toil. Sava is a land of contradictions, where verdant forests meet rolling hills and fertile plains stretch toward the vast Indian Ocean. The region's natural beauty is almost deceptive. Its vibrant landscapes conceal the labor and resilience of those who live there. It is not just a place of biodiversity, but of human diversity, a tapestry of people and stories as rich as the soil itself. For centuries, Sava has been home to the Betsi-Misaraka people, whose very name, meaning the many who cannot be divided, hints at a deep-rooted unity. This unity was not a concept but a practice, a way of life. Their connection to the land was not about ownership but stewardship. They took only what was needed, cultivating rice, fishing the rivers, and gathering from the forests, ensuring that the earth could replenish itself. Then came vanilla, introduced by French colonists, an orchid that was at once fragile and demanding, its success reliant on human intervention. For the Betsi-Misaraka, the crop became an extension of their way of life. Its meticulous care, the patience it required, mirrored the rhythms they had always followed. The hand pollination of each flower became a ritual of precision, its demands shaping their days and filling their fields with the promise of a sweeter future. By the early 20th century, Sava was no longer a quiet agricultural region. It had become a hub of activity. Farmers rose before dawn, their steps guided by knowledge passed down through generations. With each flower pollinated, they sowed not just a crop, but a legacy. Vanilla became a currency of pride, a symbol of connection to both the land and the past. But Sava's transformation came at a cost. The region's isolation made it almost entirely reliant on vanilla, leaving its people at the mercy of distant buyers and volatile markets. Prices surged and collapsed, dictated by forces far beyond the Betsi-Misaraka's control. A cyclone could undo months of work in a single night, reducing fields to ruin. Yet through it all, the people endured. The Betsi-Misaraka's strength lay in their sense of community, their belief that survival was a collective effort. When a crop failed, neighbors shared what little they had. When markets turned, they gathered to find a way forward. It was this unity, the essence of their name, that sustained them. Vanilla, once an offering reserved for emperors and kings, had slipped beyond the walls of palaces and entered the hearts of ordinary people. Its aroma, a delicate blend of sweetness and earth, had a way of transcending boundaries, finding a home in the kitchens of Paris, the medicine cabinets of London, and the laboratories of New York. By the early 20th century, vanilla was no longer a rarity. It had become a sensation. Yet as the world's appetite grew, so too did its dependence on Madagascar. The island, with its fertile volcanic soil and tropical rains, seemed to breathe life into vanilla planifolia in a way no other place could. Farmers, their hands stained from curing pods, became the unsung stewards of a commodity whose value had skyrocketed. Sava, in particular, emerged as the epicenter, producing beans so rich in flavor they set the standard for excellence. Vanilla was no longer just a flavor. It had become a bridge, connecting the sweat of farmers in Sava to the elegance of dining rooms in Paris and beyond. It was a global commodity, yes, but more than that. It was a symbol of the invisible ties that bound humanity together. Then came the specter of war. Madagascar's strategic location in the Indian Ocean made it a pawn in global conflicts, and during World War II, colonial authorities conscripted Malagasy men into military service or labor battalions. These men left behind not only their fields but their families, their absence reshaping the social fabric of their villages. The exodus of men began gradually, a trickle that grew into a tide. In the aftermath of World War II, Madagascar, like much of the world, experienced profound social and economic shifts. Many men left their rural homes in search of work, lured by the promise of wages in the growing industrial centers of the island's towns and cities. Others were drawn into the political movements that surged during Madagascar's fight for independence, their energies redirected toward a cause larger than their fields. Some sought employment in colonial industries, railroads, plantations, and factories, where labor demands swelled under French rule. These opportunities, often harsh and exploitative, carried the allure of cash income in a society increasingly tied to global markets. To leave the village was to gamble on a better life, a chance to escape the subsistence economy that had shaped their forebears' existence. The cumulative effect of these forces, economic migration, political engagement, urbanization, and war, was an emptying of the fields. With the men gone, the burden of survival fell squarely on the shoulders of the women who remained. At first, this was seen as temporary, a stopgap measure until the men returned. But as the years passed, it became clear that many would not come back, their futures tied to the cities, the factories, or the battlefield graves where their names would be forgotten. The women, who had stepped forward reluctantly, now stood firmly in the fields. They took up the work of pollination, harvest, and curing with the same care and precision that had always defined the vanilla trade. And yet, their role grew beyond the fields. They became the managers, the negotiators, the leaders. They were the ones who ensured that life in the villages continued, that the delicate vines of vanilla bore fruit, and that the legacy of their communities endured. It was not a role they sought, but it was one they embraced. A quiet revolution that reshaped the vanilla fields and the society that depended on them. For many women, these skills weren't learned, they were inherited. Mothers taught daughters, grandmothers taught granddaughters. Vanilla farming became a generational craft, a shared responsibility that united families and strengthened communities. As their confidence and expertise grew, the vanilla queens began to organize. They recognized that the challenges they faced, volatile markets, theft, and exploitation by traders, could not be tackled alone. The answer lay in unity. Across the villages of Madagascar, women formed cooperatives, pooling their resources and knowledge, creating networks that became the backbone of the industry. Among these leaders was Zabuline Ertans, whose vision extended far beyond her own fields. As the founder of Vidika Vanilla ZP, she created opportunities for over 100 local families, focusing particularly on employing women and providing them with fair wages. Under her guidance, the cooperative model thrived, transforming vanilla farming into a community effort that lifted entire villages out of poverty. Then there was Berthine, a vibrant advocate within one of Madagascar's leading vanilla exporting companies. Her efforts focused not only on improving the livelihoods of farmers, but also on eradicating child labor in the vanilla sector. Her work ensured that the industry's growth did not come at the expense of its most vulnerable members, embodying the ethical leadership that defined the vanilla queens. Together, these women and others like them became the architects of a quiet revolution. Through their cooperatives, they set fair prices, negotiated with traders, and implemented strategies to protect their crops from theft. Their leadership wasn't just practical, it was transformative. It allowed the vanilla queens to rewrite the rules of an industry that had long operated in the shadows, making it more equitable and sustainable for the communities at its heart. Pooling funds was not just an economic decision, it was a declaration of trust and unity. In villages where poverty was as common as the rains, every contribution was a sacrifice. Yet they gave willingly, understanding that these funds would protect them all. From these shared coffers, they hired guards to patrol their fields, the sentinels of their hard-won livelihoods, protecting the delicate vines from thieves emboldened by the high value of the crop. They confronted a world that had always spoken over them, stepping into spaces where decisions were made and demanding a seat at the table. Negotiating directly with buyers, they brought the weight of their collective voice, a force that could not be ignored. It was no longer a single woman vulnerable to manipulation. It was a united front of farmers, each with her own story but standing together as one. Setting fair prices became their first act of defiance and empowerment. They studied market trends, discussed strategies in hushed but determined voices, and calculated the true value of their labor, of the mornings spent walking the fields, the hours devoted to pollination, and the weeks of meticulous curing. When buyers came with offers that undervalued their beans, they refused. The vanilla queens knew their worth, and they would not sell below it. In these moments, the women became more than farmers. They became businesswomen, navigating the complexities of global markets with an astuteness born of necessity. They were strategists, reading the ever-changing dynamics of supply and demand. They were leaders, guiding their cooperatives through a trade fraught with challenges. Their decisions rippled outward, affecting not just their immediate families, but entire villages. A higher price for vanilla beans meant children sent to school, homes repaired, and communities revitalized. The cooperative model became a beacon of what was possible when women, bound by shared struggle, worked together to reclaim the value of their labor. This transformation was not simply economic, it was personal, even revolutionary. In stepping into these roles, the women were rewriting the rules of engagement in a trade that always kept them in the margins. They proved that leadership did not require titles or formal education. It required resilience, ingenuity, and the courage to challenge the status quo. In the stillness of the night, under the canopy of stars, the fields are alive with a different kind of vigilance. Vanilla, often called black gold, has become a magnet for thieves. The value of the crop, soaring to unprecedented heights, has made it as much a target as a treasure. The response has been one of necessity. Farmers patrol their fields at night, moving silently through the rows, their eyes adjusting to the darkness. It is not fear that drives them, but desperation. To lose even a part of their crop is to lose more than income. It is to lose hope. If the land and thieves do not undo the farmers, the markets might. The global vanilla trade, as sweet as its aroma, is bitterly unpredictable. Prices rise and fall with the irregularity of a storm at sea, leaving farmers at the mercy of forces far removed from the soil beneath their feet. When prices soar, there is celebration, but it is fleeting. Farmers expand their fields, hoping to capture a part of the bounty, but the expansion itself fuels the next collapse as overproduction floods the market, driving prices downward. What was once a year of plenty becomes a year of scarcity, the wealth of the previous season unable to stretch far enough to meet the demands of the present. There is no bargaining here, no fairness. The value of a vanilla pod is a story written by others, and the farmers are left to endure its unpredictable chapters. The cooperatives, born from necessity, have become lifelines. Here, farmers find solidarity, pooling their knowledge and resources. They share techniques, strategize against market fluctuations, and protect one another's fields. These cooperatives are not merely about economics, they are about survival, about holding on to the hope that has sustained the vanilla trade for so long. NGOs, drawn to the struggle for fairness and sustainability, walk beside them, not to lead but to empower. These organizations bring tools and techniques that were once unimaginable in the villages of Madagascar. They teach farmers how to conserve water in an age of erratic rains, how to restore the fertility of soils exhausted by decades of monoculture, and how to protect their vines from the growing fury of storms. But their role goes beyond technology. NGOs introduce the concept of fair trade, connecting the farmers of Madagascar to a global network of buyers who value equity over exploitation. With these connections come not just higher prices, but something rarer still, stability. Long-term contracts, born of trust and mutual benefit, allow farmers to plan for the future, a future that, for once, feels within their grasp. The cooperatives and NGOs do not impose change, they nurture it, allowing the farmers to take ownership of their own transformation. This is not the industrial agriculture of vast machines and faceless processes. It is human agriculture, where each pod carries the imprint of a farmer's hand and each harvest tells the story of a community's survival. There is a quiet dignity in the fields of Madagascar today. Farmers, who once faced the uncertainties of theft, climate, and market volatility alone, now walk their rows with a newfound confidence. Their work is still difficult, the challenge is still immense, but the burden is shared, and the victories are celebrated together. In the end, Madagascar's vanilla is more than a commodity. It is a symbol of resilience, of humanity's connection to the land, and of the power of tradition to adapt without breaking. And as the fields of Sava continue to thrive, the scent of vanilla carries with it a reminder that in a world of constant change, there are still stories rooted in soil, in sweat, and in hope.